In today's weather forecast, a powerful storm system is developing across the southeast. How much rainfall could you expect out of this system, and how strong could the winds actually get? And then all eyes are on deck on the west as several storm systems impact California. And then we really have to watch these temperatures quite closely for record-breaking temperatures across North America. So in today's weather forecast, we'll break down all those details. Welcome back, it's David Schlotthauer here, your host in the Weather Center with an update on your forecast on the European model for December the 13th, 2023. So the weather perimeter that you're looking at here is the 500 millibar vorticity cyclonic, and this is showing us how much spin there is in the mid-levels of the atmosphere. So this is at 18,000 feet, and this helps us as forecasters better forecast with what is going to happen into the future. So this is a look at Thursday morning, and we can see where our surface low and mid-level vortex are located. That's the spin, that's the vorticity on your screen. And we also have another disturbance down here that we're going to have to watch. And then we have another disturbance up here that we are going to monitor too. So three areas are going to collide and phase up, what we call basically a weather system phase up together. And when this happens, we can get some interesting things. So going forward here on the Euro model, okay, and we can see how this all plays out. This is actually for Friday afternoon, evening for December the 15th. Over Oklahoma, over northern Texas, we have another disturbance over the Dakotas. But it's really down here where this surface low is going to generate, because we do have some upper level divergence. So we have some baroclinic forcing along this moisture, along this stalled front that is draped over the Gulf of Mexico into southern Florida, as well as off the coast. And so when you have that front in place already, and we have one of these disturbances that come right along, we actually revigorate the atmosphere. So we actually condition for a system to develop here with a lot of moisture, with a lot of forcing that is involved. So when we go forward, we can see how this all takes place. There is that upper level disturbance, but that's going to help to, again, get this going down here in the Gulf of Mexico, and that's going to really unleash quite a bit of impacts over Florida. This is, by the way, Saturday night into Sunday morning, the 16th and the 17th of December. And then this will eventually consolidate into a more powerful system right off the eastern seaboard, as you can see here. Look at that vorticity. That's really deep. And then another one of these lobes of vorticity want to drop down, this PVU streamer, we call it. And that's going to really help get more dynamics going. Maybe some snow here on the north or on the western side of that low with that baroclinic ascent that we're talking about. So what this is going to result in is an air mass response because of that disturbance that's coming off of Texas into the Gulf of Mexico, combined with this surface high that is over Tennessee, over Kentucky, over the Great Lakes. This is a very strong high at 1,044 millibars. So between a 1,044 millibar surface high and pressure that is down right around 1,020 millibars along the Florida coast, that's going to set up a pretty tight pressure gradient throughout the day today. And we can see those isobars, which kind of indicate the difference in air pressure from one location to the other. And the tighter the gradient between these two locations, what we call the pressure gradient force, the stronger the winds are going to be. And they're blowing pretty strong out of the east-northeasterly direction. While, yes, there may be a few pop-up showers, it's going to be the winds, the coastal flooding, and the high surf that we're going to have to contend with throughout the day on Thursday into Friday and even into early Saturday before this low moves on through. But I want to show you something that develops here on the Euro model. We got rain down here, right? That's going to be our disturbance that is going to form over the middle of the Gulf of Mexico, because again, we have that trough that I showed you. There's going to be some interaction with this trough in the surface wave over the Gulf of Mexico and the upper level disturbance at the 500 millibar level, which will be ejecting out of Texas into the deep south on Saturday. So what that's going to result here is once we go forward in time, we have this stalled front, and then eventually we get this disturbance that gets encroached into Florida. So the rainfall starts pretty much by about, I would say, this is roughly on the order, this is pretty much, okay, this is 8 in the morning, 9 in the morning, so about 10 in the morning, Floridian time. If you're in Fort Lauderdale, if you are in Lake Okeechobee, just keep in mind that the conditions are going to deteriorate as that system moves on through. And then eventually, by the time we go into about 5 p.m. on your Saturday, we can see some light to moderate rainfall will continue, but we got to really watch this surface low very closely and where it goes. If this surface low is a little further north and it moves in this general direction, we could develop a warm sector within this. And if we do, we could get tornadoes. We can get severe weather stretching all the way from Ocala, Florida, southward into Miami, Florida, Daytona Beach. We could see a warm sector setting up here because we have what we have here is we have southeasterly flow or at the surface, but we also have winds that are more out of the southwesterly direction. So we got to keep an eye on model guidance for that. We could see a narrow perimeter space for severe weather, including tornadoes and some very heavy rainfall, since we have PWAP values that are well over a couple of inches perhaps. So we got a lot of moisture that this system is going to carry with it, along to go with that deepening surface low. Going forward in time, that surface low goes up the eastern seaboard into, say, the Carolinas, where it's going to continue to deepen. The darkest green colors, that's 1 inch of rain for every 6 hours. So that's pretty heavy. That's roughly about a half an inch an hour or so, or the peak rainfall rates, we should say, with that surface low at 990 millibars. By 3 in the morning on Monday, that is a very deep surface low, 982 millibars over North Carolina, over Virginia. That gradient really tells you a lot, that there's going to be a lot of wind associated with this system as this goes further north. No, we're not going to see a whole lot of snow with this since there's limited amounts of cold air to its northwest, but we're going to see a lot of rainfall and maybe a little bit of snow for the highest peaks here, a little bit of blips in the purple and the pink there, which indicate that we're going to see some snow potentially. Not really a snowmaker. This is going to lose its energy by the time we go into, say, 3 in the morning on Tuesday, December the 19th. So areas like, say, New York, you're going to get quite a bit of, maybe a little bit of rainfall. Well, you're going to get decent amounts. I would say about 1 to 2 inches of rainfall. The snowfall to the north, not going to be amounting to too much. Maybe a few inches at most with this limited moisture on the northern flank of this system. Fortunately, otherwise this would be one heck of a nor'easter if it all came together perfectly. Luckily, it's not going to do that this go around, but still, it's going to bring in a little bit of snowfall, but especially a lot of wind and a lot of rainfall that this thing is going to generate. So get ready, folks. It's coming, and it's going to come in pretty hard. For Saturday, if you're in Florida, then eventually on Sunday and Monday across the mid-Atlantic coast and the Northeast on Tuesday. Rainfall totals look impressive, especially over the southern portion of Florida where we might get 2 to 5 inches of rainfall. We could see areas that could see as much as 3 to 5 inches across the Carolinas. Southeastern Georgia, maybe 2 to 4 inches. If you are in northern Florida, we got to watch this one. You might see as much as 2 to 4 inches of rainfall also with that. So with this amount of rainfall falling within a short amount of time, there will be flood impacts, okay, on rivers, on small creeks, streams. There could even be some street flooding, some urban flooding. So just keep that in mind. If you're living along the coast, there's going to be a lot of seawater impacts, maybe some coastal flooding, maybe some minor storm surge. We're not talking like hurricane type storm surge, but yeah, the water's going to come up because our tide levels are going to be really high too. Because, you know, we're in that cycle where our tides get really high, then they get really low. So at the time of high tide is when we could see the best chances for coastal impacts, such as flooding and beach erosion, and maybe some breakers along the jetties as well. Looking up towards the north here across the mid-Atlantic and the Northeast, rainfall totals anywhere between, say, 2 to 4 inches of rain, especially in Virginia and and West Virginia. You get the best amounts. If you're in downtown New York, you might see about 1 inch to maybe a couple of inches of rain. So not a big rain producer the further north you go, but still, nevertheless, you're going to get accumulative precipitation with this system, which could lead to some minor flood problem. Since I care about you all so much, let's take a look at those snowfall totals. Now, for portions of the Appalachians, you might get 2 to 4 inches of snowfall again at the very peak. We're not talking snow very low with this one. This is the warm system, so not a whole lot of snow is anticipated. The cold air is well removed, right? This is an El Nino kind of setup system. Over New York and also northern Vermont, you might get as much as 2 to 5 inches of snowfall out of the system. So again, limited snowfall, more rain, more coastal, and more flooding impacts with this one. Okay, we got to understand there's not much cold air, and when there's not a lot of cold air, there's also not a lot of snow that these systems generate. So keep that in mind. Not a whole, it's a nor'easter kind of setup, but we're losing the snow. We're not seeing a whole lot of accumulation here, which is good news for people that are making way for early travels for Christmas. Okay, Christmas is a big holiday, and so hopefully the snow amounts are not that significant after all with what we see here on the Euro. It's also a good idea that we talk about the West because there is more storms coming. Okay, so we got storms in the southeast and the eastern U.S., but we cannot forget about our viewers that live in California. If you're living in Nevada, if you're living in, say, Utah, if you're living in the Four Corners, yeah, it's going to get active. We are already seeing a little bit of snow there in portions of Albuquerque to the north. You get it. I get it. I understand. We're going to get more, okay? So let's kind of dig in and look at what the Euro has to show. So the first system still is on par for Sunday over Sacramento. If you're in the Bay Area, if you're in, say, Big Sur, if you're in, Stockton, if you're in the mother lode of the Sierra, just keep that in mind. We're going to start seeing rain. Now, this is the warm system, so we're not talking a whole lot about snow down to, say, 3,000 or 4,000 feet. We're going to see snow at around 6,500, maybe 7,000 feet. A lot of subtropical moisture being advected northward because of, one, how low in latitude this storm is going to be. So going forward, we're going to see rain continuing on again, off again on Sunday into Monday. Especially Monday morning could be really dicey for the morning commute, at which time we have our coastal storm on the other side of the U.S. So it's kind of a coast-to-coast storm that we're seeing. Except for the Midwest, going to be pretty quiet, right? So that's for December the 18th, then more rain just keeps on coming. This is by Wednesday into Thursday. We're getting more rain. Southern California getting the brunt of that second little piece of energy as it moves into SoCal and then eventually into the Four Corners with another little wave of disturbing weather coming into California. Now, as you know, there is a lot of uncertainty in the models, and I'm telling you, I'm with you all on that. I mean, it's been very annoying, very upsetting just to see how uncertain the numerical guidance has been. It's all about this continuation of a wave pattern. I mean, models don't handle this situation very well. So, like I said, we will iron out the details once we get into middle of next week with that second piece of energy. But right now, it looks like Sunday, Monday, and maybe Tuesday look to be very wet and stormy. Strong winds, heavy rainfall. Probably not going to see some flood impacts just yet. I'm not confident on that. We're going to get a lot of rain, but it should be spread apart within 3 or 4 days to prevent such impacts like that. But still, a lot of rainfall, a lot of wet roadways for next week. Now, as far as the temperatures go across the U.S., how much rain and snowfall could you see out of the wet weather for the West for next week? Well, we're looking at anywhere between 1 to 3 inches of rainfall, especially if you're in the foothills of the Sierra, where a lot of the rainfall favors that area because of orographic effects. A lot of that moisture being squeezed out over the higher elevations. So like the coastal range mountains, you could see 3 to 5 inches of rainfall. The valleys, like the Central Valley, maybe 1 to 3 inches at most, maybe even less than 3 inches. And then the foothills of the Sierra might see as much as 3 to 5 inches, with some areas that could even get close to 8 inches for the period of 4 days. So yeah, a lot of wet weather is on the way. As I just mentioned, when we looked at the precipitation type forecast, not a lot of snow in the mountains, and that seems to be the case on the Euro deterministic snowfall total forecast, where you might see anywhere between 3 to 8 inches in the higher elevations. Now, further south, where the mountains are taller, going to be able to capture more snowfall. So you might see anywhere between a foot to maybe a foot and a half, but really not much snow this go around with these storms coming in next week. A very quick look at your actual air temperatures, then we got to really dive deep in the temperature anomalies because they are pretty alarming from the Euro model, which is usually the more kind of conservative model. I don't even want to show you the GFS. Okay, GFS is haywire on temperature anomalies. So we're not going to use the GFS. We're going to use a Euro, more conservative forecast. So looking at the temperatures for tomorrow, definitely mild down here across the deep south. Yeah, what about some mid to upper 60s? What about some low 70s here for the southernmost portion of Texas? Even down here in Los Angeles, might have temperatures in the low to mid 70s. That is far above average for mid-December standards, and this continues. I mean, look at this. Temperatures in the mid to upper 50s in the Midwest. Even the Great Lakes, like southern Michigan, could have temperatures in the low 50s. Where are your negative temperatures? Where are your single digits? Well, you got to go way north. You got to go into central northern Canada to even find some colder temperatures because it is just going to be very warm. Even look at this Montana. You're going to have temperatures there right around, say, the mid to upper 50s, that far north. I mean, this is just obnoxious just to see this. And then right along the coast, like Florida, could see temperatures in the mid to upper 70s. Maybe some lower 80s. And this is not going to get better, folks. It's only going to get warmer. Maybe some cooler weather for the Northeast, but still, the whole trend here is it's going to remain above average up here in Canada. Even so, temperatures are in the 20s, maybe some low 20s. It is still well above average for mid to late December standards. And that lands us on this forecast. This is the ECMWF or Euro Ensemble temperature anomaly forecast, and this is averaged based on a one-day basis. So we're going to blend it day to day together, and so you're going to see a more smooth image, the more accurate forecast I like to use. And look at this. It's not going to change very much. Still above average through the next 5 to 6 days. Other than the southeast there, you're going to see below average temperatures. But look at this. I mean, in Canada, are you kidding me? Let's go to North America. I mean, all up here in Canada, well above average. I mean, that pink there, that's 30 degrees above normal, folks, in a one-day average. That's just, I mean, Canadians, if you're watching this video and you're wanting the cold weather, I'm sorry. Gotta suck it up, Buttercup. I gotta say, because it's going to be really warm up there for a while. I just don't see any Arctic invasions. In fact, this is completely a 180 flip from the Arctic outbreaks. Imagining this area being blue, but now instead it is red and gray and white colors, which really illustrate just how far above average they will be. Even down here in the Midwest, temperatures are going to be well above normal. So the long story short, it might be on some deterministic models like, oh, I'm going to get some cold weather finally in the Midwest. Most of the ensembles and the super blend are not indicating that. So right now, confidence in any Arctic outbreaks is like a 1% chance of that occurring within the next 15 days. And you can see why our Arctic oscillation is in the positive territory, which means what? A lot of the Arctic air is locked well into the northern portion of the world. That means like the North Pole, the Arctic Circle, gonna see much of the cooler temperatures. But in this case, Canada won't be joining in on the party because this is just going to be very, very positive. And it's partially because we have a lot of stratospheric warming that is expected to take place in the stratosphere, and that's going to really unleash a lot of this positive territory AO. But eventually, hopefully, that stratospheric warming event will cause another disturbance in the polar vortex where we might see this kind of come down into more of a neutral territory. Gosh, the control run is way down here as far as the AO forecast, calling for a negative phase by the end of December. Well, before I end the video, I want you all to check out my Sacramento Weather Center office webpage. There will be a link in the description below this video if you want to check that out. You can see my about page, my blog page, my links, disclaimer, and much more. You can't miss out where I did make a blog post yesterday. Be sure you do check that out. I encourage you all because it really goes into in-depth of the upcoming weather pattern that we're facing into next week and into the following week after that. But if you don't want to, you could also follow me on Twitter. There will be a link in the description below this video where you could find me there, where I also go into in-depth with our weather pattern, okay? But that's going to do it, you all. Thank you for watching, and I'll be back with you more tomorrow.